said we'll be able to create our own modules, but before you can create your own modules like the math module that we use, one of the core concepts that you need to understand is the functions, and that's what we are going to talk about today. In the next session, we are going to create our own module, and you can use that to elevate your Python expertise. So let's begin. If there's no question or no inquiry, we can go ahead and start. Okay, so the last time we dealt or we tried solving this particular problem. For those who are not here, we are trying to solve the quadratic equation, and the quadratic equation usually comes in this form. So there's going to be some constant a multiplied by x squared plus some constant b multiplied by x plus c equals 0. And the Almighty formula provides a simple way to solve the quadratic equation. Okay, so if you check the math module, the link, I have not added a link here, but if you check the math module, you will see that there is no function for calculating the quadratic to finding the solutions of a quadratic equation. There's nothing like that. So in that case, we are going to create our own function, and in doing so, I'll introduce to you how to create functions in Python. So the work here is for us to be able to find the solutions to these equations, and also return the type of solution. But just for now, let's just return the solution to these quadratic equations. So supposing that we wanted to create a function called quad, okay, and this function will take 3 arguments. So those arguments are going to be, when I say arguments, I mean inputs. So the function will take a, b, and c. For any quadratic equation, there's always going to be the constants a, b, and c. So we want the function to take a, b, and c as arguments, and then we will use a, b, and c to calculate the roots of the equation using the almighty formula. And then after that, we want the function to return or output the roots or the solution of the equation. So this is what we want the function to do. So how do we create a function? You create a function by starting with the definition keyword. So you're going to define the function. And since you've been programming Python up until this point, you know that they like to shorten keywords. So instead of define, they've shortened the define keyword to def. So we are defining a function. So when you state the definition keyword, you follow that with the name of the function. In this case, we want to call the function quad. Then the variables or arguments the function will take, you state them inside the brackets of the function name. So you want the function to take constant a, b, and c. So after you've stated the function, its inputs, then if the body of the function, before the body of the function comes, you start that with the colon. So anything that comes after the colon is going to belong to the body of the function. Usually what you are going to type is not going to fit on one line, so we'll hit enter and we'll start typing the body of the function. If the body of the function or what you're going to type is going to fit on one line, you can just go ahead and type whatever statement you want to type. But because what you're going to type is going to be multiple lines, you hit enter, you see that Python will create a space here. This space tells Python that whatever you're going to write is going to be part of the function. If in case you delete that space, you just use the tab key on your keyboard. If you don't have any tab key, it's the arrow that is pointing forward and backward. So when you hit that, that space will come, and when you start typing, all the code that will come will be seen as being part of the quad function. So now that we have a and b as input, we'll use a and b um, to calculate the roots of the quadratic equation using the almighty formula. Okay, sorry about that. So let's formulate that. So we are just going to write this equation here. So this is minus b plus the b squared minus 4ac all raised to the power half, which is 0.5 divided by 2a. So that's what we have here. And you know the almighty formula always return two roots. So that's why we have plus or minus here. So the first x that I'm calculating is just taking care of the plus. So I'm going to create two x variables. So this is the almighty formula that we've calculated using the arguments that we've taken. Then we can output the result. So to output the result, use the return keyword. This tells Python that you want the function to return something, and we want to return both x1 and x2. So we say x1 comma x2. Then we are going to get two values um, from this function. So we just created a function called quad, and that function takes three arguments. It uses those arguments to calculate the roots of the quadratic equation, and then it returns the roots of those of that equation.
Sir, please, I want to ask a question.
Yeah, go
Is
ahead.
the argument always supposed to be three?
What?
Is the argument supposed to be three always?
No, this problem we need the three variables a, b, and c for this particular problem. We want to calculate the solution of a quadratic equation. To do that, we need the constants a, b, and c. So that is why we have a, b, and c here. If your problem requires just one, or it doesn't require any arguments at all, you don't have to put any variables in between the brackets.
Okay. Yes, please.
Yeah.
So that means when there is no variable in the bracket, that means when you return x and x1, x2 without defining a, b, and c, you would get an answer.
No, you won't get an answer. If I'm getting what you are saying, it means if let's say you've not defined a, b, and c, but you are still going to use the function like this. Is that what you are saying?
Yes. So I'm saying that you said sometimes there can be a situation where you are not supposed to define any variable, right?
Yeah,
So it's going to be quad, define quad, then the brackets without any variable in it.
yeah,
Then let's say there's an equation that does not involve a variable.
yeah. In,
Then
yeah, go ahead.
so when you return that,
So
maybe X is
let's say you have I'm going for it a bit because of the question you're asking. Let's say we define a
mm,
function to just print a message. So let's say mess. Okay, so this is the function. It's called mess, and then we want a function to print, for example, hello. Now the function is not taking any arguments, and you see that the body of the function is not using any arguments at all. In that
mm-mm.
case, you can call the function as it is, and then when you run it, you get your message. Do you understand what I
Yeah,
just said?
so I wanted to use you're using print. I wanted to use
Yeah.
return.
So I'm going ahead a bit because of you. So let's say return hello.
Okay.
Okay, then we call the function again. So is my network. Yeah. So the same thing. The return always
Okay.
just gives us the output.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So it does the function of a print. This one
Not
it does the
necessarily.
same.
Not necessarily, but you can think of it that way. The return keyword, because the function is taking its input, they have to be an output. So if you don't have any return keyword, the function is not going to give you any output. So you can think of the
Mm,
return keyword as
what it brings.
yeah, as print for now.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, sure. So let's bring back our variables and uh, okay. So we just created a function called quad. So um, I've already showed how you can call the function, but let me just do that again. So now that you have a function called quad, you can call the function anywhere in the notebook and you can use it. So I'm just going to call the name of the function and then I'll pass in A, B, and C that we need. So I want to calculate the solution of this quadratic equation here. So in this case, A is 1, and B is 9, and C is 8. So I'll just pass those values in here. It's 1, 9, and 8. And then when I do that, if I run it, I'll get the two variables that we will get. So x1 is for the first part of the almighty formula, and then the x2 belongs to the negative part of the almighty formula. Is that okay? All right. So with that, if you understand this, we can use the same function to calculate the solution for this quadratic equation here. All right. Um, so let's try solving the second quadratic equation using the quad function. So here, A is 1, B is not existing, so B will be 0, and C is 4. So we'll call the quadratic and the quad function 1, 0, and 4. And when we run that, we'll get the output to be complex and numbers. So the return keyword and definition keyword, I've already explained that, so that is what is here. So you just got how to create functions. So you start with the definition keyword followed by the name. If there are going to be any inputs that the function will take, you state that, followed by the body of the function, then the return keyword. That is how you create a function. It's that simple. All right. Is that clear to everyone? Okay. Um, something connected. Okay. So with that, we can go ahead and improve our code. There is something that you can realize in
Sir,
this.
please, I want to ask a question. Please, when you defined your quadratic variables, which is the define quad A, B, C, and then you put in the almighty formula, you solve for x1, x2, and then after returning the x1, x2, you said the quad is 198. That is the solution for the quadratic equation.
No. One
The moment
198 is not the solution to the quadratic equation.
the va- the
The constant in the quadratic
the
equation.
constant, yes, the
Yeah.
constant in the quadratic equation.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to ask a question that can you um add the code that you printed, like you typed right now, the quad 198
Yeah.
to after the return.
Can you add it?
Yeah.
No. The creation of the function cannot include calling of the function. So here we are calling the function to use it. So you can't add when you are going to use it during the creation. I don't know if you get what I mean. You can't do this. When you do this, it defeats the purpose. We are creating the function first. After creating, then we use it. Like I said, if you do this, you are saying that this code that I've just highlighted is part of the function. So you are creating the function at the same
Mm,
time you are calling it again.
okay. So it's best to define that
Yes. It's
maybe you assign it to.
yeah. It's best to define the function first, then you can use it later on.
Okay. All right. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Sure. All right. So I'm going to draw your attention to something. By now you guys know what lists are. A list is just a group of objects separated by commas in between square brackets. So something like this is what we call a list. Something like this is another list. So by now I'm sure you guys already know this. Right. So you see that when I was returning because there are two outputs that we need, I separated the two outputs by commas. Somebody might think that this is a list, but it's not a list because it's not in between square brackets. When you create a collection of objects that are not in between square brackets, you are creating another type of list that we call tuples. You don't really need to bother yourself about this. You just have to know that when you hear somewhere what tuples are, you should know that they are just different types of lists that are not in between square brackets. So that is what the comment here that I put here is trying to say. So we have a collection of objects that are separated by comments, but they are not in between square brackets. All right. I was going to update the code a bit. So you see that the code has some repeating parts. For example, the x1 and x2 that you are calculating, the only thing that is changing is the addition and subtraction. This is okay, but you might want to get rid of repeating codes as much as you can. So I'm going to try to redo this again and change some parts. But again, you are not at compulsion to change this. If you understand it the way it is, keep it that way. But if you want to improve the code and limit the number of lines, you can do so as well. So again, this is just me trying to improve the code just a little bit. All right. So with this knowledge, you have knowledge of creating um, functions now. And again, because you've created a function in this notebook, you can use this function in any cell of the notebook that you created it. In the next session, when you're able to create modules, you can create the function once and use it in any notebook of your choice. So with your knowledge of function, you will build up on that in the next session to create modules that you write a function once, then you can use it anywhere. So that is it for today. We are just talking about functions um, to use.